After the complete debacle of an invasion of one of their colonies, humans decide to band together to try and defend each other. We know this because if you passed any human planet or even got close enough for a sensor sweep, you would find turrets. Well, orbital satellites, but they operate the same. It is the same basic concept, as it is very easy to see that weapon systems are pointing out. They are never pointed in. Most of them are in geosynchronous orbit around the planet, forming a strange design so that every single avenue of approach is covered. These humans are paranoid. But then again, considering what's happened throughout their history, who can really blame them? As negotiations were proceeding, many of the outlying areas wanted to make sure they had good commerce with the humans. And it was very common to still see many of the humans bringing in supply ships, freighters, frigates, anything of that nature. However, everyone understood that underneath that veneer was a turret somewhere that was ready to pop out and shoot you. So they were always very careful with them and very polite, which some would think that the humans would get very arrogant on, but no. The humans, when dealing with other species, were extremely polite, to the point where they would offer up much of their medical equipment just to help others out. If a ship came in that was damaged, they were the first ones to run over with these strange devices. Well, they weren't really devices, more like cases. They call them bags, but it wasn't really a bag because it was hooked around their shoulders. They would immediately flip it on the ground, open it up, and would sprawl out full of medical equipment. Some of it very low tech, as simple scissors or something they use for what they call stitching, and up to different type of sensors, scanners, and even a small device that will make the chemical compounds they require to repair someone. It was strange to see such a dangerous group be so caring. They took special care when dealing with the young ones. This was very surprising, considering how mean they had been to everyone else. However, it was understood that as long as you were polite to a human would be polite back. That was, unless you got them intoxicated on anything. We found this out the hard way, as we found that humans enjoyed ingesting a toxic substance called ethyl alcohol. This would put them in an odd set of stages, as initially it would make them enjoyable to be around, and then they would get very quiet the more they drank, and then eventually they would get excessively mean and want to fight with anyone. Most people didn't want to try a human, so they would end up fighting with each other, which usually made a lot of people simply place wagers on who would come out on top. And we found out very quickly, you don't always wager on the biggest one. Though this is common for most of the galactic sentient species, that the biggest one will always win. Not true for humans. In actuality, it was always the small one who could move just a little bit faster and come up and strike the larger one just the right way that's going to put them to the ground. Several times you'll hear an odd crack as something of their endoskeleton would give way. We took a lot of note from this. We realized that the humans were just as squishy as they looked. Though they may be mean, if we took them on straight up, as in person to person or person to us, it would be a simple matter of actually taking them down, as humans were not exactly the largest species out there. In fact, they were barely above mid-level if that was the case. However, they did not seem to push the fact that their muscle density was far above anything anyone else had. And also on several occasions, you would find a human using this strength to aid others in moving equipment if they were having difficulty doing so. This made much of the galactic community confused, as we did not understand why the Aurigans might want to be hostile to humans. It was strange. They did not border human space, yet for some reason saw humans as a threat. We did not understand they did. It was always common to see an Aurigan just hanging about, standing above all the rest, as they were very tall and very thin in comparison to the humans. However, they did not have the straight up muscle mass as a human did. And with this, the Aurigans watched and helped with the commerce. It was to the point that eventually the humans allowed other ships to enter their space to trade, and what other ships saw when they entered human space scared much of them enough that they would never face down the humans. They saw those turrets. "What is with you humans and you flippin' turrets?" As they surrounded the planet, not only at their equator, but also going from the poles. It was strange to see this, a strange cross shape on any planet close to the edge of their own territories, though no one was allowed inside what they call the Sol sector at all, not even delegations. It was surmised that inside the Sol sector would be just a straight kill zone, so no one wanted to try them. However, the Aurigans decided to try something to stop the flow of these turrets. Every single species might have feared their turrets, but what if you could take them offline? It was several years before anyone would realize what was going on. The Aurigans had sent a very large ship, in fact, their largest freighter that they could possibly put together, and sent it straight towards human territory. It never truly stopped long to refit or anything of that nature, which was odd for a ship that size. Most of them need constant maintenance. And yet it flowed towards the Sol sector, jumping constantly in FTL space to different areas, and would simply stop long enough to charge its engines. No one understood this ship, but no one really cared at that point, as peace had finally come back to the galaxy. Well, at least we had thought. The Aurigans used a strange type of new FTL jump, which jumped them not only a single sector, as most FTLs do, but jumped them several into the Sol sector. And then it went adrift. It sent back a single message, a video feed of what it did, as a way to try and convince the other species that the humans were weaker than they all thought. The ship drifted towards their home planet. Their home planet, as we could see through the video, was surrounded by not only turrets, but massive turrets, ones that could reach out farther than we ever thought possible. The ship, this giant freighter, simply drifted, acting as though it was damaged in some way. Video that we would find from the human showed that the engines were leaking a different type of color. We figured it was some sort of plasma, but it was unconfirmed what it was as the ship drifted closer and closer to their planet. You could see different type of what the humans call tugs getting close to it, trying to latch onto it, but seemingly every time they did, something would happen to stop the tugs from being able to latch on. And then the humans did something we did not expect. They had their tugs line up along with at least 3 of their battleships that we could tell. And then they launched harpoons from turrets and launched them deep into the hull of that freighter, trying desperately to stop it before it got to their home planet. As if they did not stop, it would have definitely crashed right into it, and something that large would have caused an ecological disaster that would reach planetary scale. In other words, it would be uninhabitable. Then the humans found something was wrong. The engines of the massive freighter turned on and charged towards the planet within seconds. Every single turret, it did not matter if it was the battleship or if it was the defense satellites, tracked the freighter as it charged towards the planet, and just as they began to fire, the freighter itself detonated, radiating a burst of light that blinded every single camera that was watching it. And what they found out as the light dissipated as quickly as it arrived, they could see a strange type of shockwave, which was just barely visible as it reached out to each of the cameras, and as it reached, they shut off. A small device had been launched out the back of the freighter that had taken video of the actual burst. This little device was transmitting the video feed, and you could see almost all the turrets immediately shut down and go adrift. The explosion itself had completely destroyed any ship that had been trying to pull it. The dreadnoughts, the battleships that were holding it, were completely seared on one side, and all but one were ripped to pieces. The Aurigans thought that the humans would simply turn on their neighbors and burn through all their resources trying to fight their neighbors, but the Aurigans did not understand that humans really do not like it when people try to play them. They did something that everyone was confused on. They went silent. For months, no one heard a peep. No one was allowed in their territory. They simply had a warning given to them to stay out of human territory. It was almost 7 months. And then an entire human fleet surrounded the Aurigan capital. They blinked in with some sort of technology. No one understands why. And it only took a moment before those damn turrets began to turn themselves on any ship that was around the planet and began to blast its way through. The humans had figured out exactly who was in charge of this operation and had completely bypassed every single one of the other species. And those turrets once again showed their devastation. However, the Aurigans were slightly prepared. They had already set up ground-based turrets themselves. This massive artillery was actually able to reach up and assault the ships in space. It was the first time that a planet itself had fought back against a ship or a fleet, or in this case, an invading armada. The humans must have been shocked as they immediately began to try and reach out far beyond what that gun could do. And then they realized it was more than one. The Aurigans were not stupid. Crazy, perhaps, but not stupid. They had prepared for any type of invasion that the humans had shown so far. They had defense satellites set up that would immediately come around the side of the planet and begin firing. However, they were completely underpowered in comparison to anything the humans had brought. Even the human patrol ships were more than enough to take out these satellites. The ground-based cannons, however, that was another story. It surprised us all that the humans did not simply fire down on the planet. They had the weapons to do so. It seemed as though they could take out the cannons without too much problem, but they hesitated. They did not want to fire down on the planet. And it was not until the Aurigans released something that the humans did not expect. Several missiles had actually fired up, one of them striking one of the ships, and everyone heard the distress call. Everyone heard the humans screaming through their communications devices how the Aurigans had poisoned them. It was some sort of gas that had leaked into their vessel, and they were all choking out. Whatever choking out is. With that, humans simply turned their guns towards the planet, but they did not fire their main batteries. They fired something else. They fired cylinders down towards the planet. And as soon as they fired this one volley of cylinders, they immediately turned, got away from the gravity well, and blinked away. We would not find out until later what those cylinders were. For the Aurigans, there was one thing that they did not want in their atmosphere, and that was a high concentration of O3. What the humans call ozone. To the Aurigans, If they wanted to use chemical weapons, the humans were not above doing the same thing. Though they had lost several ships and had to come back to tow a few of their space hulks away, those that had not been completely obliterated by the cannons based on the planet, the humans did not ever fire again. And the Aurigan homeworld, even though it still survives, will no longer support Aurigan life itself. They can never go home. It was not long before humans began to open up relations to other species, those that had not assaulted them in any way, and they began friendly relations once more. However, the human delegation was immediately asked one question. If they had the ability to end the Aurigan threat with their chemical weapons, why didn't they immediately use them? The delegation simply looked at each other, almost confused at the question, and simply said, "It's against our rules of war," but they used the chemical weapons first. They choked out our people, so we choked them out. Every species looked at each other confused, and then a single delegate asked the humans, "Wouldn't the biological or chemical agents simply make it a quick and easy victory?" The humans looked at each other, and then one pulled out one of his data pads and began typing. And before he was done, he swiped up, and a large bunch of papers appeared in front of everyone on their pads or on the holographic display. Well, let me tell you something about the Geneva Convention. And the humans continued their speech about their rules of war and what can and can't be done, at least should or shouldn't be done. And they began to tell us what their concept of total war was, unrestricted warfare, as they called it. However, as they were making this speech, something else was going on. Another ship had arrived inside the Sol sector, this time a bunch of refugees claiming that they were seeking asylum. Being the kind-hearted creatures that they are, the humans welcomed them in and brought them to one of the nearest colonies. Before the delegation had left the rest of the species 4 days later, over 97% of that colony was dead, and the rest did not last long. The humans once again sealed their border as they looked into the potential for biological contaminants to be taking out entire planets worth of personnel. And the border, to this day, is not open. Everyone wonders what happens to the humans. Though we can hear their transmissions every once in a while, we never see them. They have simply separated from the galactic community at large. It is now 20 of their years later. Or is it 25? I forget human calendar compared to ours. But everyone wonders, what ever happened to them? Are they still surrounding themselves with protective rings of turrets? But I have to wonder, if it was a biological or chemical attack, are turrets enough? However, it is very well known, extremely well known. Everyone has told this as almost a horror story about a single group of traders that went into human space and only one of their ships returned. They told us that the humans had warned them to leave, and when they insisted they were there to trade, the humans destroyed every single one of the ships with mechanical precision, except for one. They let the one return with a warning. "Stay away," was all they said. We take this warning to heart now, as the last thing we want to face is a pissed off human sitting in a turret.